here, as you can tell. Ready to go now? Everybody's here. So we'll call the meeting to order and ask, so this is the regular evening council meeting of May the 25th. Corporate officer, do we have any late items?
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Request of council, someone to bring forward the adoption of the agenda, please. Councillor Van Elfen and Councillor Patton, all in favor? All right. And then we have two sets of minutes to be adopted, the regular evening council meeting of May the 11th and the special council meeting of May the 15th. Anything that needs to be updated or revised in those minutes? All right, could I ask someone to bring those forward, please? Councillor Patton, seconded by Councillor Holmes, all in favor? Great. And over to corporate officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This open electronic meeting is being held without public in attendance as permitted by Ministerial Order M139. The meeting is being live broadcast, live streamed on YouTube. It will be recorded and posted to the district's website.
Thank you. On to my mayor's report. Just gonna get plugged in here. Okay. Can you hear me still? Yes. Okay. Thank you. On May the 12th, the Southern Interior Local Government Association, SILGA, executive had a conference call with Minister Doug Donaldson.
That's our second one. He's the Minister of Flynn Roe and Rural Development. The concerns of many SILGA local governments, including ours, about migrant farm workers, specifically if the province will be providing resources for safely accommodating these much needed agricultural workers. On May the 14th, Health and Community Initiative meeting, chaired by the lovely Linda Van Elfen, Councillor Van Elfen's wife. District staff will be submitting a Healthy Communities Plan H grant application to continue the speaker series on health matters this fall. The series, which is sponsored by the district and District 67 and Interior Health, has covered a wide range of topics, including vaping, cannabis use, radon, and youth mental health. CAO Haddad, corporate office. I had a
Madam Mayor, you're cutting out and we can't see you.
There, now you can see me. Hopefully I will stop cutting out.
Maybe just in case, I'll do this. CAO Anthony Haddad, corporate officer Karen Needham, and I had a discussion on May the 20th with a consultant who has been contracted by the province to work with local governments on developing safe spaces for migrant farm workers. The consultant recognizes the urgency of the situation as agricultural workers are already arriving from Eastern Canada. We hope to hear more soon, and that will be coming through CAO Haddad, of course. Councillor Holmes and I attended the RDOS and Regional Hospital District Board meetings on May the 21st, and he has submitted a report on both of these meetings. That afternoon, May the 21st, I joined the teleconference with Minister Robinson, who announced the next intake for the Community Housing Fund, which will be open on May the 27th. And I believe there is something in our correspondence to that effect tonight. The province is expecting a good uptake of the fund and expects to see another 3,000 housing units built. Minister Robinson asked for comments or questions on how the transition to phase 2 of BC's restart plan is proceeding, and although we heard a few concerns, it appears the transition is going smoothly for most communities, at least in the SILGA region. Friday morning, as requested by the Summerland Chamber of Commerce, I emceed the virtual 2019 Community Excellence Awards. I am sworn to secrecy on the winners of the 4 awards, including the Mayor's Award of Excellence, but all are very well deserved. The Chamber plans to release the completed video with the appropriate fanfare early in June. The Business Excellence Awards will be presented at a later date. Summerland is 1 week into phase 2 and local businesses are starting to reopen. The success of easing the pandemic restrictions of the past 2 months depends on us. Businesses must follow the orders and protocols set out by the public health officer, and for some sectors as set out by WorkSafe and/or AgSafe. We as consumers must be patient and respect that business owners may be nervous as they embark on this new way of doing business. They are trusting us to take the necessary precautions to keep them and their staff safe, as much as we are trusting them to operate in a manner that protects us. Our mutual goal, of course, is to keep the infection number low so that we can move into phase 3 without having to go back to tighter restrictions, which may be coming in the fall, but we'll worry about that when the time comes. We are very much still in this together. The Make Water Work campaign launched today. I would ask you to go to makewaterwork.ca, and I'm talking to counselors and staff and everyone that lives in Summerland. It would be fantastic to be the award-winning municipality and recognized for that this year. So again, you can make your pledge at makewaterwork.ca, and you'll be rewarded instant gratification, actually, with a $2 coupon to any of the nurseries that support the Make Water Work program. So I would ask that you continue to be safe and can you continue to be healthy. And that's the end of my mayor's report. Thank you. CAO.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a quick update for the community in terms of our facility openings and the risk assessments that we're currently in the process of undertaking. So we're looking at reopening some of our operations in line with the provincial restart program, beginning with the changes we made over the last couple of weeks with regards to our park access, or increasing access within our parks and our washrooms, and the information we provided over the last couple of weeks. From an operational perspective, it's certainly going to be a cautious reopening, ensuring that we have the appropriate work-safe and workplace safety protocols in place to protect staff and the public. As we look at considerations for the reopening of Municipal Hall and our works yards, for example, we're working with each of our teams to ensure the appropriate protocols are developed, again, in line with guidance from the province. Some of the work underway will continue over the next week or so, looking at plexiglass at our front counter, our service areas, directional signage, enhanced cleaning protocols, customer service flows throughout our buildings, especially Municipal Hall, with the variety of different customers that we have in there. So again, taking a cautious approach to those facilities, making sure we work with staff to make them as comfortable for staff and the public when the time comes for reopening. As I said, it's a cautious process that we're going through, looking at options as opposed to going straight to full-time opening, looking at options and opportunities for shorter hours to begin with, or appointments only, for example, over the first week as we transition with some of the measures that we've put in place, and looking into full reopening again when the time's right and the appropriate protocols are in place. For our essential services such as fire, electrical, water, and wastewater, the strict protocols that we've put in place will look to remain in place for the time being, again, protecting our essential services over the coming months. With regards to our fields and facility use, our recreation team are working with our user groups to determine timing on the opening of our larger facilities outside and inside. Our aquatic center and arena facilities are in the process of being assessed. However, these will likely take place at a later phase in our reopening plans. Beginning with the reopening of our outdoor spaces will be the first priority for our teams, which is currently underway, and looking right now at protocols for playgrounds opening as well. So that's a process we're going through, working with the other municipalities as well. We're certainly fortunate to have obtained provincial funding for a lot of the work required to respond to the pandemic. And that includes additional bylaw resourcing, including our bylaw park ambassador that's been out and about over the last week or so. All of our bylaw enforcement teams and additions related to overseeing the COVID pandemic has been funded through the province, which is great to see. Same with plexiglass and some of the other safety measures and additional cleaning requirements for our public washrooms. Over the coming weeks, we'll be providing more information for our staff and also the community on our return to work and safe work protocols as we enter the next phase of the pandemic. So that's a brief operational update for the community, and just one update regarding Giant's Head Mountain. The final works of the Giant's Head Mountain Trail redevelopment project were completed on May 15th, and this included the installation of the viewing tubes, final repairs and installation of signage. And this completes phase 1 and phase 2 of this project. So lots of work undertaken there with the community, funds donated through Rotary Club of Summerland, and the volunteer design coordination through bench site design as well. So great project to be completed. I know council worked hard with the community on that over the last year or two, and great to see that project completed, and obviously a well-used amenity that our community can certainly be very proud of. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson has a question.
Yeah, just in regards to Giant's Head, it does look really good, and I'm glad that that project is done and there's signs up. I'm wondering if, I haven't been up since the 15th of May, are there signs that discourage people from hiking on the trails that have been decommissioned? And if not, is there a plan to put some in place?
I know, yes, through the discussion we had over the last couple of weeks, if they are not already up there, they are in the process of being put in place. So I can follow up with our manager of recreation on that after this meeting.
That's great, thank you. It's nice to keep people to where they need to be and not stomp on all those restoration areas. So I'm glad that's been done. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have been dragged up to the top of that mountain recently, and it looks great. We heard at RDUS last week that there's actually a plexiglass shortage out there because of all the different organizations having to install it, and I'm just wondering if we're affected by that, or how's the municipality's supply of plexiglass?
So we've been fortunate. We've been pumping up our fantastic Summerland businesses. Summerland Glass have provided our plexiglass, and was actually installed a couple of days ago. So within the measurements taking place, it was probably a week, and we've been able to provide their contact to some of the other municipalities as well. So fortunate to have those guys in town, so we've found it easy because we've got a fantastic business in Summerland, but I know there's been shortages outside of that region.
Councillor Trainer, did you have a question? Nope. Okay. Yeah, I was in the office today and was watching them do the final work with putting up the plexiglass, and it was fantastic to see Summerland Glass on their shirts. So supporting local businesses is so important right now. Well, all the time, but especially right now. All right, so on to development items. Item 8.1, development variance permit, DVP 20-009 at 21815 Garnet Valley Road. That is for you, CAO?
Yes, I'll share my screen and we'll get the slideshow going. So up on the screen, we've got this presentation for item 8.1. So this application is to consider an application for a development variance permit to increase the maximum height of an accessory building to facilitate the construction of an indoor horse arena at 21815 Garnet Valley Road. The subject property is zoned as country residential. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, on the right, the future land use designation is for rural residential. The site is located within the agricultural land reserve as well. The applicant's proposing to construct an indoor horse arena, as I said, for personal use at the subject property by requesting an increase the maximum height of an accessory building and structures from 4.5 meters to 7.9 meters. In order to construct the arena, a variance is required to increase the allowable building height. Currently, the bylaw states that 4.5 meters is the maximum height for an accessory building in the country residential zone. However, there's not an adequate amount of space to construct a safe indoor arena for the equestrian activities that are being proposed. The standard interior building height for the interior indoor horse riding arena ranges from 16 to 18 feet from ground measuring up from the bottom of the trusses. The proposal calls for a roof reaching a total height of 7.9 meters or 26 feet. And up on the screen, you can see the floor area of the arena, 145 feet in length and approximately 68 feet in width. Up on the screen are the building elevations that were provided in the report showing the structure and the height there. And I've zoomed in on a couple of the elevations, the front elevation and right elevation on the next diagram, just to make that a little clearer to show the actual height of the structure that's being proposed. This photograph shows the structure that's actually intended to be used for this purpose. It currently exists in Penticton, and the intention is to relocate it and obviously upgrade it a little bit to the subject property if the application is supported. The riding arena is to be sited in an open level area of the property to reduce disturbance during the construction. Most adjacent properties in staff's review will see no significant impact from the proposed development. However, staff had some concerns regarding the proposed arena's proximity to the existing single-family dwelling at 21801 Garnet Valley Road. You can see that property just to the south in the photo on the screen. The proposed arena is to be sited a minimum of 15 meters from the property line abutting this property. Is included in the agenda package are some concerns from the adjacent property. One of the measures that's been proposed to be put in place by the applicant is a tree buffer, including 65 cedar trees. And we just received that information today from the applicant that would screen the structure from that neighboring property. And I'll show you a little bit more detail where those trees are proposed right now. Just before that, in the report, we also identified that there were some unpermitted structures that are located on the property. And you can see here on the screen the location in red of those structures. So staff have been working with the applicant over the last few weeks to bring those structures into conformance. There have been a number of those structures that have been removed over the last couple of weeks in advance of this application, and we're working with the owner right now to go through the permit process, in particular with the hay barn on the west side of the property. So that application for permit application is in right now, working with them to have that one approved as well. I mentioned just before that with regards to the impact on that adjacent property to the south, and the concerns we've received are obviously the impact of the height on that neighboring property. The applicants brought forward a proposal to plant 65 or approximately 65 cedar trees along the west and south portions there, and you can see that in green. So that information was provided to staff today. So in staff's review, we recognize that the setback of the building will in staff's review have a limited impact over and above what would occur if the building was compliant with the bylaw. The height needed to accommodate the proposed use is, in staff's opinion, justified with the information provided by the applicant. So the staff recommendation for council is to support the variance, and I've added a condition there for staff for council to consider should council wish to support the application, just to reconfirm the landscaping requirement to limit the impact on the adjacent property, that a condition be added that will require the planting of 65 cedar trees along the southwest corner of the structure for council's review. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Before I go to you, Councillor Van Elfen, I just want to ask the corporate officer if, other than that one item that's attached to our agenda, if there was any other public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did actually receive, as of 4 p.m. today, 2 letters from Don and Bev Russell of 21801 Garnet Valley Road, and a letter from Diane McCansland of 15505 Gallagher Street.
Okay. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a conversation with one of the neighbors that said they sent a letter in May the 5th and a letter May 23rd. And now I find out there's another letter that's been sent by another neighbor. We've received none of those letters in our council packages. So at this point in time, I'd like to table this variance until we get the letters in our packages so we can look at the letters and possibly contact neighbors if need be. But to make a decision tonight without taking into consideration the neighbors' concerns definitely concerns me. Thank you.
Councillor Van Elfen, I believe that the correspondence that Ms. Needham just spoke about has been sent by email to us. Could you make sure that you receive that email? It was sent later this afternoon.
I haven't seen it, Madam Mayor.
Oh, okay. I know that I've received it, but I'm not sure. Has anybody else on council received those? Councillor Barkwell, yeah, others?
I received it, but I guess it begs the question, how come the May 5th letter wasn't in the package? The other one seemed to arrive kind of late, but the May 5th one should normally have been in the package.
I'll ask you to respond, Ms. Needham.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, the letter actually of May 5th was just received this morning from the applicant. I believe that letter was sent for a previous application that was scheduled to a meeting agenda, and that was withdrawn by staff and the application was changed. So there was further notification provided, and the applicant, or sorry, the Russells, he sent a letter on Friday actually, and evening I believe it was, and then forwarded the second letter this morning to include. So we did receive that this morning. And further to the question with regards to the receipt of correspondence, a lot of correspondence does come in over the weekend prior to the meeting. And we do have until 4 p.m. the day of the meeting to accept correspondence. However, should council feel that's not enough time, we can certainly change that requirement to ensure that we receive any correspondence by the week prior or at time of publication of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're suggesting that council would perhaps change, is that part of our procedural bylaw?
Madam Mayor, that is a practice that is part of our notification under the land use procedures. So that could be something we would change.
So maybe 4 p.m. Friday or 4 p.m. Wednesday, which is when the agendas are put out, or maybe 4 p.m. Tuesday. Anyways, we can have that discussion. Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to not receive a letter that was sent out after the agenda was published. I would say it's just at the taxpayers' jeopardy whether, if they send a letter in the morning, whether we'll necessarily have a chance to review it. But I noticed that the letter sent May 5th addresses development permit 20-009, which is this application. So I would have expected that it would be with the agenda package this time around. It says right on it, re 20-009, which is this one.
Anthony, could you speak to that? I think that we just heard that the application changed once it.
Yeah, so the original application was for, I believe, increased height, approximately 9 meters. And that there was notification sent to the surrounding neighbors for this agenda item to come on the previous council meeting. However, the applicant asked us to remove that item from the agenda based on them revising the plans down to what's in front of council now. So the letter, I believe, on May 5th was related to the original height of, you can see in there on the 4th paragraph of that letter, 8.8 meters. Now the building has been reduced to that 7 or so meters in height. So it was a previous application height that that letter was speaking to.
Is that clear, Councillor Barkwell?
Yeah. It's, I mean, things change, but I would have thought that the letter was still applicable, and the I guess the applicant has the opportunity to up or something, I guess, but anyhow, that yeah, I would have expected it.
So I will go first to our corporate officer, then to Councillor Trainer, Councillor Holmes, and Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to point out that staff did contact all of the members of the public that did write in on the application for the first item that had been from the early May, I guess you would say. So they did reach out to all of those members of the public in order to advise them of the new application, and also to ask if they wanted their letters forwarded to council. So it gave them an opportunity to review the updated application and to determine whether or not their particular correspondence still applied.
Great. Sounds like staff has done their due diligence, so I appreciate that. Councillor Trainer?
I've had a chance to review the correspondence. Are we allowed to ask some questions now that's come out of this, or is that the right time? Okay, I'll ask. So one of the letters that we got, the neighbor was just concerned about geotechnical surveys. So does any of that need to be done for a building like this? She was particularly concerned about any kind of landslides in the area.
Yes, so staff will, through the building permit stage, the geotechnical analysis is typically undertaken. So that'll be a piece of work that will be undertaken should council support the variance for the eventual building permit application. So that's the stage when the geotechnical review would be undertaken.
Okay, can I have one more question? So the second letter that we got dated May 23rd, there was 3 points that the two people were concerned about. The first one was that the building be painted a neutral color. I'm not sure if that's something that council has discretion over. The second thing was vegetation, which I think the motion on the table addresses that. And then the third question was about outdoor lighting, heating, and ventilation systems on the south side of the building. Again, I'm not sure if that's something that we can look into or is considered in this, or if that comes later.
Yes, so through Chair, Your Worship, so those 3 points were forwarded on to the applicant, and that's where, as I mentioned earlier, the landscaping requirement is, or landscaping proposal has come forward. So the shrubs there, we also confirmed that there's no intention to have any outdoor lighting or heating or ventilation on that south wall of the face. Again, that could be another condition. If council believe that's a concern with the project, that could be applied as a condition for the for a variance approval as well. The other point regarding the painting requirement, the applicant's not keen on being advised on what color to paint the structure. The design, we don't really have any design guidelines that speak to color or even materials in the agricultural area. So again, council could apply a condition, but that would be I think a little difficult to enforce on that color side of things. In terms of the landscaping and the ventilation equipment, for example, that may be a little easier to apply as a condition should council want to support the variance.
Thank you, Councillor Trainer. Councillor Holmes?
So I presume we're not tabling this. We're asking questions. Okay. So so this is a building, an existing building that's being relocated, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So if it was a new build, if they built it from scratch, is there any reason why they couldn't build it to regulation? what they would they still need a variance?
Through Chair, Your Worship, for the height. So again, from the information we've provided by the applicant for the equestrian facility, I guess the 4.5 meter height limit does not support the, I guess, how that facility would be used for the riding purposes. So they need the additional height regardless of the existing structure.
So just to follow up, then that's another, I guess, issue with our bylaws that we ought to address that, because then if that's the case and this is an allowable use, then you know, then every equestrian center building that comes to us would require a variance. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the definition, this building is defined as an accessory building. We don't really have a definition for the various types of uses that would fall under those accessory buildings. So typically the 4.5 meters is applied to all accessory buildings in the agricultural area, for example. So there was another property, I think we mentioned in the report further down the road, where they triggered a variance as well. So there will be unique circumstances, and I think it's we could potentially look at creating a rule specific to equestrian facilities in the zoning bylaw, but that would have to be a specific type of use that we need to provide some clarity around.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Carlson, you're up next.
Thank you. It sort of tags on what was just said. So if this property was actually zoned agriculture, 7.9 meters would be permitted height. Is that correct?
No. So
No,
I believe
not quite.
4.5 meters is the typical height in the agricultural area. But if let me just confirm that with our zoning bylaw.
Seems like a lot. And I guess the follow-up to that is why is a 9-acre parcel of land considered country residential and not zoned agriculture? Do we have any background on that? That seems, and if are they subject to the same farm home plate that I mean, there's all kinds of red flags here for me, and I'm just wondering, do they have agricultural irrigation water? Is that how they're going to water their 65 cedar trees? Do they have a farm status? I just wonder if there's all these things that come to mind. So I just not so sure.
Yeah, so the land is zoned country residential. I don't have the history in terms of when it was rezoned or what the history is attached to it, but they're bound by the rules of the CR1 zone. We can't apply the agricultural zone rules to this property. And I'm just looking at the country residential zone. Height for accessory buildings is 4.5 meters. I'm just going to check the agricultural A1 zone just so I can answer that question for council. Bear with me while I get that information. So maximum height for agricultural buildings is 12 meters in the agricultural zone. So correct. So they would
what I thought. So
allow that in the ag zone, but given the country residential zone, that's the 4.5 meter set or a height limit is what applies.
that's very helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Patton, then Councillor Van Elfen, and then back to Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To our CAO, I was looking at the letter from the lady from Gallagher. I have a couple questions. One of the questions was that she indicated that they had done some earthworks and excavating for a couple months there and increased their lot by, she says, 75 feet, and then put the barn on it. So my question is, how is the building department going to confirm through geotechnical engineering that it is stable? Because I don't know of any geotechnical engineer that will come in after the fact and pass something. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that this barn had a stop work order put on it also.
Yeah.
And was ignored and continued on building. So I realize that the application stands on its own merits, but on the other hand, history has to be looked at too when we're moving forward with these. So I've got some questions in regards to not only the new building, but more so the existing structures that they're now going to look at permitting so that they can get this application put forward. Thank you.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kind of a question around the same situation. We have a bunch of buildings on that property that were built as unpermitted. Will these have to be dealt with and cleaned up or removed prior to another permit being issued? Is this an opportunity to have it corrected, or do we issue a permit, let the next building get built, and then have to possibly fight or go to legal means to have the other buildings removed, or do we just not give a permit until the things are done correctly?
Yeah, so that's certainly one question. That's a good point. And we're obviously working with the owner to rectify all the structures that have not had a permit, and we'll need to continue working with them. But council, if council are of the mind that those unpermitted structures need to be removed or permitted before approvals for the next one gets built, then what I'd recommend is that council, I guess, defer or maybe Karen postpone this variance, because should council support the variance, then we'll be obliged to issue the building permit for this equestrian or the larger building when that comes in. So the opportunity to have, I guess, this project held up until those other structures are dealt with appropriately is the time is through this application.
Councillor Van Elfen, you have a follow-up?
I do, Madam Mayor. That if this is the appropriate time, I'd like to table this until all the other unpermitted issues are dealt with prior to issuing a new permit.
So you've made a motion then?
I have.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Carlson.
I actually have Councillor Holmes seconded. I actually have a question.
Just
I wasn't seconding it.
Councillor Holmes, you seconded? Thank you. Before you ask your question, Councillor Barkwell, and then Councillor Carlson. And then Councillor Holmes.
So just so I understand something here, the exterior walls are about 8 feet tall on the, well, there is only exterior walls, I guess, but the walls are 8 feet tall around the perimeter of the building? Is that?
No,
okay.
I think the report mentions the truss ridge being 8 feet tall.
So what does that mean?
So that's 2.4 meters. I guess if I can maybe put the screen back up and walk through this. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll share my screen. Okay, so I've zoomed in on those elevations. So you can see the red pointer. So this portion is 8 feet.
Okay.
And the remainder, so the actual the height of the structure for the, I guess this portion for the riding stable, the 8 feet portion is here. That obviously extends the height within the building for the purpose of the equestrian.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know what that ridge height meant. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. When it comes to provincial regulations for building on ALR land, would the zoning matter? Does country residential have to follow the same provincial regulation as a piece of agricultural land when it comes to the footprint and everything involved?
Yes, so they've staff have reviewed the ALR regulations on this file as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Holmes and then Councillor Patton.
So if this structure would be allowable if it was zoned agricultural, would they have an option of applying to rezone to be agricultural, and then they wouldn't have to apply for a variance?
They could. That could be an option that they may want to consider to avoid the variance. It may have other impacts depending on the use regulations within the A1 zone, for example. So that's obviously an option to avoid the need for the height variance. But there may be other implications that we haven't. They will need to consider. Like
a home plate, for example.
Yes.
I just before I go to Councillor Patton, I just want to ask our corporate officer a question about process. We have a motion on the floor to defer this to another meeting. It's my thought that perhaps we shouldn't be discussing this any further at this point, but what is the correct process, please?
Madam Mayor, should council wish to vote on this, this conversation could be kept for another time. However, the discussion might also help council determine whether or not they want to vote on this. So I think at this time, just keeping the motion on the table and calling to question after everyone's had a chance to speak.
Good, thank you. I didn't want to cut people off, but I also didn't want to carry this on if it really wasn't proper procedure. Over to you, Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just seconding if Councillor Van Elpen's motion. So I tied with Councillor Holmes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Councillor Traynor.
Just for clarification, are we deferring this so that the property owner can take care of all of the buildings on the property that aren't supposed to be there? And then we'll look at this again, is that why? Okay, and then one more question. It looks like the site was visited on March 20th. And that's when the bylaw infractions were noticed. Has the owner done anything yet to start removing some of those buildings or bringing his property into compliance? Do we know where we're at with that?
Yeah, so the site was visited well before then. There's 3 structures that have been removed on May 10th. In the diagram that we showed with all the structures in red, there were some that have been removed. So they are in the process of rectifying that. It's obviously going to take a little bit longer to deal with the remainder of the unpermitted structures over the next little while. So the intention would be to deal with those if that's a direction of council, and then have this application come back to council for consideration.
Just before I go to Councillor Carlson, I really like the thought of repurposing a building rather than building new. So I really like that. However, and we've had this discussion before, I don't really like that all kinds of bylaw infractions have occurred at this property. I will be voting in favor of deferring this until those infractions have been resolved. Thank you, Councillor Carlson.
Thanks. I'm wondering if it's common practice to withhold. I mean, I understand they need a variance, so it's a little bit different, but is it common practice to withhold a building permit while asking a landowner to fix something that may have been done 2, 5, 7, 10 years ago? Or is that perhaps not the best way to do it?
Yeah, I think the chance, I guess the authorization of this structure going through the planning process or the variance process provides an extra, I guess, a means for council to have the issue dealt with on the property. It is tough to deny a building permit, especially if the other buildings on the property don't directly impact it. So this is certainly the chance. There's obviously the enforcement means that can be taken in tandem with issuing permits as well, whether they're Section 57 notice on title, for example. That could be a process that we bring those applications to council should the owner not be willing to remove the structures that have not been permitted. So there's a few different tools. The opportunity in front of council obviously provides extra teeth and incentive, I guess, to clean up any of the unpermitted structures.
If I might just ask a question, following up on what you've just said, Anthony, and then Councillor Holmes, you'll be up. All of this has taken place on a property zoned country residential. Would these accessory buildings, I just want to get a better understanding of what the issue is. I know that they were not permitted, so they should have gotten a building permit before actually constructing those pieces on their property. But I'm wondering if that was the issue, or that is the issue, or maybe if this is something that would have been allowed on country residential on that zone anyways. Can you answer that question?
Yes, through the chair, Madam Mayor, there is the lot coverage regulations of the CR1 will really dictate how much of the land can be built on. So lot coverage, this parcel, I believe, so it's approximately 20% of the land can be built on. Sorry, 10%. Sorry, the land is above 400 or 4,000 square meters. The property is just over 22,000 square meters in size. So they could, if they built out, have a maximum of 10% of the lot covered. So they're still under that lot coverage based on all the buildings that are there. It's just they need to be permitted in the appropriate manner.
Thank you. That provides great clarification. Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thanks. I think would be a good idea though if staff could, when talking to the property owners, if they could talk about the idea of rezoning. I just think if you're going to have a farm, then it should be zoned accordingly. And it sounds to me that that's what they're basically intending to do there, is have a farm.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions or comments, we have a motion on the table to defer this. Maybe I'll ask Ms. Needham to read what Councillor Van Alphen moved.
That this application be tabled until all other unpermitted structures are brought into compliance.
Okay, thank you. That's pretty clear. Any further discussion or questions, comments on this? I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Carlson is opposed, so that carries. Okay, on to number 9.1 bottleneck drive signage policy. This is for Ms. Needham.
I'll take this one, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron's got the rest. So I'll just provide a brief summary of this request. The purpose of this report is to consider a policy that confirms council's intention that Summerland sign bylaw not be applicable to the bottleneck drive signage program in consideration of signs being authorized by the district for control of traffic, and to exempt the bottleneck drive signage from third-party signage requirements within the zoning bylaw. So you can see up on the screen on the right-hand side the bottleneck drive signage that's been within the community over the last few years. The association's comprised of approximately 20 wineries, cideries, and distilleries located throughout the district. You can see up on the screen just a snapshot from the website showing the location of the wineries, distilleries, and cideries throughout the district, and the membership on the right-hand side. The bylaw signed bylaw currently prohibits third-party advertising signage. Third-party signage is prohibited with the exception of district-sponsored wayfinding or directional signage, which are designed to direct pedestrians and vehicle traffic to public facilities, services, or utilities. Despite this prohibition, there was an historical agreement between the district and Bottleneck Drive to allow third-party signage. This item came to council back in 2016 to formalize the arrangement, and staff were provided direction to bring forward this policy. However, has been delayed for a couple of years. So we're now in front of council with the draft policy for review. So there's certainly community benefit for this signage policy in terms of the partnership that the district has with the Bottleneck Drive organization and the wineries, which provide a significant draw to the community throughout the entire year. Enhancing wayfinding for visitors on what can be narrow and winding roads throughout the community to these facilities will certainly provide for easier access to these businesses throughout the year. So staff recommendation in front of council is for the report to be received by council and for the signage policy to be adopted by council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Just a quick question. We are at the adoption stage because we've already had first, second, and third reading, I think.
I think this is just the sign policy. So there's no first, second, and third reading of there's no bylaw amendment proposed through this one. It's just the policy.
Okay. Oh, it's just because it's just a policy.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Councillor Traynor.
I might have missed this, but this just refers to those specific signs that are branded Bottleneck Drive signs. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, a lot of wineries have their individual sandwich board signs out on the road. Those are not part of this.
No, so the businesses would still be able to advertise with their sandwich boards or their directional signage on their properties. This applies to the signage within the districts right away.
Okay, and so the sandwich boards, though, that you sometimes see not on their property, and this is with other businesses as well, those ones are prohibited.
They're separate. I don't have the bylaw in front of me, but they would be separate to this type of signage. It's
okay, so we're just talking about the specific marketing signs that they've designed.
Correct.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Other questions? All right, could I ask someone to bring forward the two motions, please? Councillor Patton?
Shall I read them, Madam Mayor?
Yes, please.
The council received the report of the planning technician Bottleneck Drive signage policy dated May 25th, 2020 for information, and that policy number 300.7 Bottleneck Drive signage is attached to the report of the planning technician dated May 25th, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Holmes? Any further discussion on this? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Okay, 9.2. This one is for Ms. Needham. Road closure and sale bylaw number 2019-035.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This particular road closure bylaw has been advertised in the Summerland Review and has been brought forward for council's consideration for adoption. However, in the report, there is a condition for adoption on this particular bylaw. And at the conclusion of the report, we did note that at the time of publishing for the agenda, there were only 2 of the 3 agreements that were executed. The third is in the final stages and at this time has still not been executed. So I would like to request that council defer this particular item to the June 8th meeting. And that way we can consider it at that time.
Councillor Holmes, you're good with that, making that recommendation or motion? And seconder? Thank you. So is there any discussion on this? Okay, so we're voting on deferring this particular item until the June 8th meeting in hopes that the third agreement can be signed. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. 9.3. I think this is for you as well, Karen. Electronic meetings, COVID-19, and council procedures.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So over the past 2 months, as the district and our community have adjusted to the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic, meetings of council have evolved first to an electronic platform with live streaming and recordings of regular and special meetings following. This was a way to try during the circumstances to ensure transparency and accountability to the public. Up to and including this evening's meeting, members of the public have been encouraged to submit written correspondence as part of representation to council. This report is in response to the recent ministerial order that further defined public representation under the legislation to include participation by electronic means. The purpose of the report, therefore, is to provide council with options for public participation using technology and enhanced processes. As part of the procedural discussion with council, staff has also included a proposed council correspondence policy for consideration. Again, written correspondence has always been a way for members of the public to communicate with council, and this continues to be encouraged. The proposed policy is intended to further clarify the process for the circulation of correspondence for both council and the public. Finally, and continuing with the procedural discussion, the proposed amendments to the procedures bylaw is to confirm the agenda item order during our regular meetings of council, which have evolved over the past 6 months in practice, yet have not been reflected in the procedures bylaw. Council has continued to support various ways to meet safely as a council and engage with the public based on the advice of our provincial health officer in support of the health of our community and efforts to limit the transmission of COVID-19. While things continue to evolve, the recommendations in this report provide all residents with various options to participate in meetings of council, whether it be written, electronically, or by phone. And through direction of council, this provides clarity in the policy supporting these processes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Questions? I have one question. Will our brief conversation a little bit earlier this evening about when I guess the cutoff date for correspondence in order for it to make it to the evening agenda, is that something that we should talk about now? Because that would impact the opportunity, at least for written correspondence, to be received in time for an evening meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify, this policy doesn't specifically talk to deadlines, more to the circulation of correspondence. The procedures bylaws speak to the amounts of time that we're giving the public to respond to statutory notifications. But this does cover written correspondence that is provided during a statutory notification period related to development applications. And it does talk about ensuring it's circulated to development services and included in the council meeting package. So the discussion on the correspondence that comes after the package is published is something that we could have separate from the policy, but certainly during this time if you wish.
Okay, good, thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Could we just be walked? Could we just be walked through on how, if a member of the public wants to participate electronically, what they would do? could we just walk us through that so I could
Certainly.
really understand?
So the proposal is to invite members of the public who wish to speak to an item on an agenda to phone ahead of time to be put on a speaker's list. So that's the first step. That way we are able to identify people who are wishing to participate. We also can talk with them with regards to the technology, if they want to participate through the Zoom meeting platform or a teleconference, which the teleconference is a way that we can connect people either through Zoom or by phone. So again, trying to understand the technology that each member of the public may have. So that's the first step, is to try to have a speakers list. At the meeting itself, the speakers list will then be moderated by one of our staff from IT. They will have the list, we'll know which items that people want to speak to, and they will phone those people to invite them to join into the meeting. We can have what's called a waiting room in the meeting, so we can actually have them on the line and then just unmute their mic at the time to speak. The nice thing about that as well is the moderator can also put their name, just similar to our names that are shown here, so that we know who we're speaking to. There would not be a camera, it would be just spoken. So that's the idea of the speakers list. Should someone be watching a meeting, so again, a lot of public hearings, questions come up during the presentation. So should someone want to speak during the meeting, there will be a phone number, it's our council chamber number, monitored by staff, and people can phone, provide their name and their civic address. And if they want to speak on a certain item, we would put them at the bottom of the speakers list and include them in that particular item as well.
Okay, then just to follow up there, I'm just wondering if there's any merit to the idea of starting off kind of on more of a kind of gradually to make sure we everything runs smoothly by maybe just having the advanced speaker lists for the first meeting or two before allowing people to phone in during the meeting, because it could get complicated if we go straight into something like that. And maybe also starting off with speaker list that just agenda items or public hearing or statutory requirements that they speak to, rather than anybody signing up to talk about anything like we would normally have at the end of our meetings. I think we should make sure we walk before we run. But otherwise, it's great. Love it.
Councillor Barkwell.
Yes, I certainly commend staff for the work they've done putting this together. I think I wonder if we'll be wanting to continue this. The world's going to be changed when this is all over. I don't agree with Councillor Holmes. I think that the audience is limited and it won't be any sort of overwhelming confusion. I presume some meetings there may not even be any development permit items which people would want to be speaking to. So that just leaves the agenda items and then the open mic at the end. So it's more complicated to know that you can phone in and be in a waiting room than anything else, because conceptually what you can speak to is still the same. Just my 2 bits.
Councillor Holmes for the rebuttal.
Councillor Barkwell has more faith in technology than I do.
I guess we could do a dry run. Any other comments on the policy? Councillor Carlson.
Just that there are, according to YouTube, 10 people currently watching this council meeting, so perhaps they could have a look at the email address and send a note and let us know how and if they're the types of people who would be willing to participate, especially if we wanted to give it a try.
So you're putting putting it out to the folks that are watching currently? All right. Councillor Barkle.
10 people's only a beginning. If we're entertaining enough, we could build it to hundreds.
Councillor Patton, you have your mic off. Did you want to, or on, I mean, did you want to speak?
No,
Oh,
thank you.
okay.
No,
All right.
I'm taking it all in.
All right. I don't see any questions, any further questions. Let's see. I guess if it's all right with council, we could do all 4 of these at the same time. Karen? Yes? Councillor Holmes?
Sure. Council received the report of the Director of Corporate Services, Electronic Meetings, COVID-19, and Council Procedures dated May 25th, 2020 for information. Council approved the proposed enhanced public process policy, electronic meeting guidelines, public participation as attached to the report of the Director of Corporate Services dated May 25th, 2020. That council approved the proposed council correspondence policy, circulation of council correspondence as attached to the report of the Director of Corporate Services dated May 25th, 2020. And that council directs staff to bring back amendments to the council procedures bylaw number 2018-035 for reading consideration with changes to the regular meeting agenda item order and headings as outlined in the report of the Director of Corporate Services dated May 25, 2020.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Carlson. Further discussion on this? Councillor Trainer.
I'm just wondering if it's worthwhile doing a press release or something like a Coles Notes form that shows the public how they can do this, just so that you know, they're aware of how to do it and they don't have to read through all of this stuff. And also encouraging them that they can phone in or do whatever they want to if they want to participate.
Thank you, Councillor. That's certainly would be the intent. I believe we would chat with the CAO and ensure we use our social media channels to simplify the message and encourage participation.
You have to unmute, Mayor.
Sorry, thank you. So we have this motion on the table, all 4 parts to it. And unless there's further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor? Oops, where's my camera? Where's my hand? Okay, any opposed? Great, so that carries. Thank you very much. As Councillor Barkle said, that's a lot of work has gone into this. So all of your staff, Anthony, IT included, thank you. So we're on to 10.1 correspondence. Anthony, did you want to speak about the Summerland Grad 2020 request?
Yes, so we received.
Before you do that, sorry,
Right.
before
Go
you
ahead.
do that, the head of the grad committee, I guess she is, Ms. Patterson, has asked how to view this video. And I've told her that it's being live streamed, but you know, I haven't sent her the link. Is it possible to do that so that she can listen to this discussion? Can somebody send that?
Yeah, I can send that
That'd be great.
link to her now.
Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, are we talking about this? Are we making any kind of decision right now? Because if so, I'll choose myself because my daughter's graduating this year.
Well, are you getting paid for this pecuniary interest?
No, but it's I probably wouldn't be I probably wouldn't be unbiased.
Oh, it's your just.
But if we're not making a decision, if it's just receiving information, then I don't see a problem. But if it's
We are going to be talking about it. Anthony is going to talk a bit about it.
and is it a decision being expected or no?
Anthony?
I'll recuse myself. Just someone give me shoot me a text when you're finished. Okay?
Okay. Before you go, Councillor Holmes, did you want to bring up any of the other items that are on correspondence?
I did, yes.
Okay, so we'll call you back before we finish with this piece.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. How are you doing, Anthony?
Good. I sent a note
Okay.
to Debbie, and hopefully she's been able to link into the discussion.
Councillor Carlson, was it you that was saying that you could see that there were 10 people watching?
If you go on YouTube and you search
Okay.
District of Summerland, you can see there's a live council meeting happening right now, and you just click on that link. But you can see below that there's 10 watching.
Okay.
So, do you want me to speak to this item now?
Well, let's maybe I'll just ask if there's any other correspondence that anyone on council wants to bring forward.
No, because Councillor Holmes wanted to.
Well, I know, but other than Councillor Van Elfen.
Well, the only thing I wanted any clarification on is the Summerland Fall Fair. They've offered to return the grant money and or keep the grant money for next year. Have we made a decision on that?
So,
thank you.
Yes, Councillor Van Elfen, staff are going to be bringing a report to council on the grants in the next couple of weeks. We've always got a number of organizations in a very similar situation with funds that have been provided and events not occurring. So there's going to be some options that we're going to discuss with council on how to deal with them. And that CFO will have that report to council in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Anything else? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to make comment on the BC Housing Fund. At the Community Housing Funds, it's going to be at $1.9 billion over the next 10 years for just over 14,000 units. And it does say that as of December 31st, only as of December, 5,200 units were completed. So I do believe that gives developers and builders within our community, especially dealing with the housing hub, the BC Housing Hub, a chance to look at some of this to do some community housing projects. I also want to make note that I did send to you, to Mayor and Council and our CAO today, a webinar that is being put on by BC Housing in regards to some affordable housing alternatives also. So, but it is nice to see that the province is really coming to the plate with a lot of money. Thank you.
And we've been encouraged to get our act together if we want to submit for this next intake that opens in a couple of days. So the timing is really good. I'm glad to hear. Thank you for that, sending on that webinar, because that could be potentially quite helpful. I saw Councillor Carlson's hand up. And
Yeah,
then
it's just a point, maybe it's a point of order, but Councillor Holmes didn't recuse himself from the conversation about the fall fair or the housing. He recused himself from the conversation
That's
about
true.
the dry grad. And so I think that that's what I was trying to say before those questions were posed. I'd also like to point out that I don't know where I read it, but we received a note asking from the grad committee asking that we don't make a decision or have a big conversation about this tonight. So I just want to know if that's where
Sorry,
we're going.
Anthony can give us an update on that.
Yeah, so regarding the grad preparation or dry grad parade, I did receive a note just on 6 o'clock from one of the organizing committee members that was supportive of having the conversation. So a little different to what the email I sent to council about half an hour or so before that. So I was just going to provide an update for council on that and then open for any questions if that works, Mayor Boot, with this item right now.
Thanks, that would be great. And Councillor Carlson, you're exactly right. That's the one item that he recused himself for. So my bad on that one.
Okay, so as outlined in the correspondence received, the organizing committee have asked permission with regards to the 2020 dry grad, looking at hosting an event on June 25th for students to walk 6 feet apart with the appropriate social distancing requirements in place. So staff reviewed the application and we actually sent the application and information off to the Provincial Health Office in relation to the provincial health order around mass gatherings for over 50 people. So the application that's been submitted has been quite creative in terms of dividing the event up into, I believe it's 4 separate events of 25 students each. That's my understanding of the application. So we sent that information off to the province. The provincial health order actually was due to expire with regards to mass gatherings over 50 people, was due to expire on May 30th. However, earlier today, that deadline of May 30th has now been extended and extended indefinitely. So that's the current wording in the updated provincial order, which unfortunately has a negative impact on these events. So we're certainly going to continue to work with the Summerland Dry Grad and the organizing committee to see if there are some alternatives out there. But with the information we've got from the province, it's looking like it's going to be very difficult to host this event this year. So looking at some alternatives, we're going to continue to work with the province, as I said, to see if there's some alternative measures that can be put in place. But that's where things sit on this item right now, unfortunately. So I know council and staff have been supportive of the organisation trying to help move their application forward. It's an unfortunate situation, but doing everything we can to see what alternatives may be out there.
Councillor Barkwell?
Yeah, I don't think we want to be like Donald Trump. I don't think this is a political decision. I think that we base it on science, and whatever the provincial health regulators say, then that's the end of it. Doesn't need to come to council.
Yeah. So this decision, typically the road closure applications are a decision of staff. Where there's larger significant impacts, we obviously bring them to council. Something like this has obviously been through the process a number of times before. It is a little revised, obviously, with the situation that's in front of us now. So, but certainly we're under the guidance and requirements, especially where we do have an order attached to the limiting of events.
Okay, are we finished talking about this particular piece of correspondence? I'm glad to hear, Anthony, that staff will continue to work with the grad class. This is, it's hugely upsetting to them. I totally understand. I'm sure all of us understand that. Could I have somebody, I guess, Anthony, will you get Doug back into the meeting?
Yes, I will. I'll send him a note.
Thank you. There. Welcome back, Councillor Holmes. I made an error while you were gone, and we talked about a couple of other things as we were waiting for the grad committee representative to get online. Councillor Carlson made a point of order or whatever. So we talked about the BC Community Housing Fund, and we talked about the Summerland Fall Fair being postponed, and Anthony told us that we are going to have a report in the next couple of weeks from our Director of Finance about grants and aid. As you recall, Fall Fair received a grants and aid. So it will include any number of the grant recipients based on what they received the grant for and whether or not they've been able to actually use that money for what they had applied for. So that was the one thing. Councillor Patton brought forward the BC Housing Community Housing Fund. And I believe you said $1.9 billion over the next 10 years. Maybe Councillor Patton, you could repeat that news. Thank you.
Yes, it is. It's $1.9 billion over 10 years for 14,000 units. And there's been 5,200 units constructed so far as of December 31st. So great opportunity. And I talked to Councillor Holmes before the meeting. Him and I were the only two on Zoom. And so I already talked to Councillor Holmes about the webinar for BC Housing. So he's aware.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I was going to bring forward the Fall Fair because they were requesting a decision of us, and it also raised the question of all the grant and aids in the status. So if a report's coming back about all the grant and aid, that's great. Thanks.
Yes, good. Councillor Barkwell.
Councillor Patton brought forward the affordable housing and the funds available. Would you agree, Councillor Patton, that one of the problems with affordable housing in Summerland is the lack of available land?
I would say that I could throw it out there and say maybe we have to start thinking out of the box, and maybe the district in itself has to be come into maybe some land development, and in long range thinking, it might be a great way of getting some affordable housing in place, and where the district ourselves actually does the development. And I know it's a big job, but other municipalities do it. So yes, Councillor.
Can you think of any locations that might be appropriate?
We're not having this conversation right now.
Yes, it's not appropriate to be talking about this right now. But that's a very good question. And I know that Anthony and I have talked about it a little bit, and we certainly will be having that the discussion with all of council about, well, as Councillor Patton said, thinking outside of the box and seeing how we can get some much needed affordable housing or attainable housing in Summerland. So very good question, Councillor Barkwell. Anthony.
Yeah, I was just going to say, since the grant application came out, I forwarded off the information to the organizations that we've been working with, and council have been working with over the last couple of years. The non-profit organizations, there's 2 or 3 church organizations or in the community that have been looking at housing projects. So they're up to speed, and I'll be reaching out to them over the next week or so as well. And then, unfortunately, we couldn't hold our housing forum. It would have been perfect timing on May 12th when we were looking at holding our housing forum. So we're going to have to rethink that process as well. But we're fortunate to have all of the various contacts that we had lined up for that forum to continue to communicate with as well. So again, this deserves certainly a larger discussion, and we'll likely be bringing something forward to council over the next little while.
Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Just Councillor Block remind me that it's a good thing that we're doing this downtown plan that's going to solve all those problems with, and we'll have this task force that with all kinds of clever people who'll be able to figure all these things out. So, and on that, I was just wondering what the status is of the task force, and are they able to proceed even with the current restrictions?
So, so council, or it must have been, I think January when council authorized the creation of the task force. So again, that's something that we've got to revisit or and bring that back to commence advertising for that committee. So that's again a process that we definitely want to get underway when the time's right. All our committees are meeting via Zoom now, which is great. So we've now got all the tools to keep those processes moving. We just got to advertise for that committee as a next step.
Okay, any other items in our list of correspondence that people would like to bring forward? I think it's been a great discussion. So if I could ask someone to bring forward these pieces of correspondence to be received for information, please. Councillor Van Elfen, and seconded by Councillor Holmes. All in favor? And no one opposed. And now on to 10.2, committee and commission minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. Development Process Improvement Advisory Committee dated February the 5th. Agriculture Advisory Committee dated February the 1st and dated February the 28th. Anything untoward in any of those minutes? Nope. Okay, could I have someone bring forward those for information? Councillor Patton, Councillor Holmes, all in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. Okay, on to councillor reports. Tonight I will start with Councillor Carlson.
The Okanagan Regional Library Board met last week online, 26 people in an online meeting. It went well. The library is working on reopening scheme for June 1st. People won't be allowed into the library, but my understanding is they're going to work on pickups and allowing people to borrow resources. One of the biggest challenges is going to be finding the space and the capacity to sort of quarantine the books and the materials once they're returned to the library, because they understand that 72 hours is going to be required. So there's a very long and slow process to get our library system running again, but they're working hard on that. Lots of really good data and information about what resources and opportunities have still exist within the library, and the huge uptake of online and digital media that they've seen over the last couple of months. And so they're going to continue to work on those, focus on getting people online and keeping those libraries relevant and in people's homes. So yeah, it's different, but it's also still working really well. So the library system, if you haven't taken advantage of any of the online resources, it's definitely worth going and checking out what's available. And there's still librarians answering questions and helping do what librarians do best, which is really helpful. So that's the only other work that I've been doing. I know that the mayor had spoke earlier about the workers who are coming into the valley, and the province is working on getting some resources in place to ensure that they're kept safe. And the consultant who's working on that is from Summerland, and she's had lots of conversation with local farmers who operate clean, decent, safe facilities and camps. The concern is people who don't have those facilities, and also the people who come to our towns up and down the valley. They don't have a job, but they are still classified as fruit pickers, but they may or may not be. They may just be transient and live a different lifestyle. So just because someone's here and they look like a worker, they may not actually have a job. And so those are the folks that we really need to be careful we find somewhere for them to stay and to be safe, so that our community and the people that live here all year round can also stay safe. So I know that they're working extremely hard and extremely fast to try and solve some of those problems. The province already has great regulations in place for farm workers once they have a job and they go to a farm. But it's all that in between, and it's tracking those people, right? When they go from one farm to another, if something had happened at that other farm, how do we make sure that we're paying attention? So it's really complicated, and hopefully we can keep it as simple as possible and keep people as safe as we need to. So those are the only things that I've been up to in the last couple of weeks.
Great. Both really important things. Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a lot to report. Grateful for the rain. Just be curious to find out when my wife gets home from her school board meeting. They're meeting in person tonight at the IMC building with social distancing practices in place. So kind of curious on how that turns out for them. Not too much else to report. Just I'm going to blow my own horn, if I may. Yesterday was 1 year smoke-free, so I'm very proud. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Fantastic. Congratulations. It's good that you're still with us. It's good for the whole town. On to Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. I have no report. I submitted the written report from the regional district. So if anybody has any questions on those, I'd be happy to answer. And I just had a question for Councillor Carlson regarding the library. And would you know if they plan to resume the ordering of new materials? I know they put all that on hold, and when new materials can be expected to come back.
That's a good question. I don't know, but I would assume that June 1st, when they start to actually move materials from one branch to another through the system and people can pick up again, and maybe they'll start that process, would be probably the earliest.
Okay, Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And unfortunately, I do not have anything good to report. So I will have to wait until next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barkville.
I was just thinking that if there's any silver linings to this whole COVID thing, it's the development of the increased their accessibility and transparency that we now have through people watching council meetings live from their home. Thanks again to the effort staff have put into that. And I have to also acknowledge that I feel a little bit for our director of finance, who would normally be doing other things and has to completely redo our current year's budget and the 5-year financial plan. If anybody's workload's being affected, I'm sure it's his. As far as me, I've just been stuck on the farm with nothing better to do but research solar sites and things like that.
Don't we know it? Councillor Barkville, thank you. Councillor Traynor.
I've been out mountain biking and hiking a lot on our trails. I just wanted to remind people that apparently there is a bear with cubs on the Trans-Canada Trail just below Conkle Mountain. So just maybe watch out for that. I was on there yesterday and I must have been on at a busy time. I didn't see the bear, but then I saw on Facebook that somebody saw it at 5 o'clock. So just be aware of that. And then I was also on Giant's Head Mountain yesterday, and the new trails and signage is really awesome. They did a good job. It'll be good once we can get some signs in really showing people where to go at the top, because the top of the mountain is taking a beating. There's a lot of trails up there still, and people are kind of going everywhere. So once we can get some directional signs, and hopefully that will help keep people on the trails. And I thought that I was pretty special because I was biking up the mountain, but then another cyclist passed me and he was on his 5th time up the mountain in a row. So that gave me something to work towards. So it was kind of funny. And also the main trail, or sorry, the main road is getting used quite a bit by everybody, dog walkers, cyclists. And so that's really good to see.
Thank you, Councillor Trainer. Very good point about the top of Giant's Head. I observed that when I was up last too. You're probably not going to want to hear this, but I'll tell you anyways. A couple of weeks ago when I was up there, I think it was the time when I met you and Eric and your children up on the mountain. So maybe it was longer than a couple of weeks ago. There was a woman who I saw more than once on my way up and on my way down. And I said, didn't I just see you? And she said, yeah, I'm on my second run to the top. And she was running. And I said, second run? And she said, yeah, it's my second of 3. I do 3 times. I run up and down 3 times at a time. So I was totally amazed. I mean, but enough of that. So I guess it's back to Karen to do her little, I shouldn't say that, that's patronizing, to do her announcement about comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and maybe it'll be different at the next meeting. So right now, just for everybody's to know who's watching, that this open electronic meeting is being held without public attendance as permitted by Ministerial Order M139. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, and it's recorded and will be posted to the District of Summerland website after the meeting.
Good, thank you. And may I ask someone to come move that we adjourn the meeting? Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Holmes, all in favor? Thank you very much.
The mosquitoes are out.
Oh.
They're going to get really bad this week because it's going to get hot.
Yes.
And
Okay.
those birds are awful noisy behind you too, Aaron.
What's noisy?
Birds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
On that side of the house, it's really noisy. On that side, there's big bangers well, not right now, but all day long. So
okay.
they go into my trees instead. Lovely.
Thank you very much, Council. We'll see you again soon.
Good evening.